All right, we are convening the Committee on Judiciary and Hawaiian Affairs. It is Tuesday, March 23rd at 2:01 p.m. in conference room 325. Got a nice long agenda today. First up, we have SB 219 ST2 HD1 relating to crimes on agricultural lands. First up, we have the Department of Ag in support. Not on. All right, next we have Office of the Public Defender in opposition.
Thank you, Representatives. William Bagasa, Deputy Public Defender, on behalf of the Office of the Public Defender. We are in strong opposition to this particular bill. Number one, it bypasses the statutory protections normally that's required under the extended term sentencing guidelines under 706-662. There's specific criteria but somehow this statute is it's like a sore thumb. It's out on left field in terms of not necessarily falling under the categories and the requirements under this particular statute. In addition, as this particular statute makes it presumes a mandatory sentence. There's no room for discretion. It circumvents Chapter 706, 606 regarding disposition of sentence. There's no chance of probation, no deferral, go straight to jail. There's a lot of unfairness in this particular statute. I kind of pointed out a little bit, but just to highlight some of it. For example, if you have a burglary on a dwelling on ag land, that person goes to jail. That's 10 years, 10 becomes 20. So you got 20 years, no probation, go 20 years to jail, versus regular burglary, residential property, going to grandma and grandma's house, doesn't go to jail necessarily, but maxes out at 10 years in jail, unless, of course, there's the regular extended term, and of course, there's regular extended term anyway. So there's still other avenues in order to get the same sentence, but following the correct and proper litigated criteria that's already been litigated. There's another situation where you have a tourist that just wanders off and wants to take pictures in the pineapple fields, ones they're trespassing too, and grabs a pineapple, all of a sudden goes straight to jail. And I don't think this is something that was what we had in mind, or you folks had in mind in trying to, when you're trying to help the industry curb this problem. There's other ways that you could do it, or craft other statutes in which you could do it. Or let's say that two co-workers get into trouble or get into a fight. One co-worker scratches the car of another.
Please conclude your testimony.
Okay, so with that, there's an unfairness in all of this, and we ask you to consider all of our written testimonies. Well, thank you for the opportunity.
Okay, thank you. And testifiers, it's a good reminder that we do have a 2-minute limit for testimony. Next up, we have Hawaii Farm Bureau in support.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair Matsuyoshi, Chair Nakashima, and members of the committee. Brian Miyamoto here on behalf of the Hawaii Farm Bureau. You do have a written testimony in front of you. We're just looking for efforts to help deter ag crimes, not just ag theft, but ag crimes. Our farmers and ranchers work extremely hard, and as you can see from our testimony, the impact to them is pretty significant. So we do hear concerns, but again, this is an ongoing challenging issue that the entire ag industry is faced with. So we ask that you support any measure that will help our farmers and ranchers address ag crimes. Thank you for this opportunity to testify.
Okay, thank you. That's all the testifiers. Members, any questions? Report.
Brian, please. Brian, what are the typical or the usual theft, hit and run on what ag crops primarily and where?
Thank you for the question, Representative. Recently we're hearing a lot with the nursery industry. Higher price commodities seems to be targeted. There are some laws on the books, but the criminals know where to hit, what to hit. And again, it's not just theft of commodities. It's vandalism, it's trespassing, so not just crops, but equipment and supplies. So there's nobody, there's no farmer, rancher, no commodity that's immune from agricultural crimes, Representative.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, Rep. Nakamura.
Also for Brian Miyamoto with the Farm Bureau. Thanks, Brian, for your testimony. I just wanted to, just following up on the public defender's comments earlier. Do you have any other suggestions on how we can deter crimes on ag property other than this type of higher penalty?
Something that we thank you, Representative Nakamura. Something that we've been discussing, and I think it was brought up in the previous committee, is the ag community doing a better job as far as reporting actual crimes, so we have more accurate stats, but also working with the law enforcement community, with not just the county police, but the prosecutors and the judges, to educate a little bit more on the current agricultural penalties that are in law right now, to help prosecute those that we're really trying to go after. We're not looking at punishing someone who kind of veers off of a trail and happens to go on to ag lands, but it is a serious issue with our farmers and ranchers. I mean, this is their livelihood, and it's being stolen or damaged or burned. So I guess more education would be beneficial and would help the industry address some of the issues that are going on with ag crimes.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Any other questions? If not, we'll move on to SB 697, SD1, HD1 relating to Kalaupapa Month. We have one testifier today from Kaohana o Kalaupapa in support.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair Matayoshi and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on this bill. My name is Joseph Lapilio. I'm the Executive Director of Kalaupapa Ohana, of the Ohana o Kalaupapa. The Ohana was formed 25 years ago at the urging and with the involvement of residents of Kalaupapa. The mission of our organization is to ensure the legacy of the residents, the more than 8,000 people who were sent to Kalaupapa, and that their legacy is remembered and that the story is accurate. Last year, Boogie Kahilihiwa was involved in the legislature. He was working to promote the idea of the Kalaupapa Month. This year, he's not here. 3 weeks ago, he passed away, and today there are 11 residents remaining in Kalaupapa. So we are, I know you have a lot of bills, so I'll be very quick. We are urging you to pass Senate Bill 697 so that we can create Kalaupapa Month and ensure that the legacy and the lessons of Kalaupapa are remembered by the state of Hawaii. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Members, any questions? If not, we are moving on to SB 939 relating to Juneteenth Day. First up, we have the LGBT caucus of the Democratic Party of Hawaii in support.
Good afternoon, Representatives. Michael Glory Jr. on behalf of the LGBT caucus of the Democratic Party of Hawaii. We proudly stand in support of this bill, and we urge you to pass it. And we thank the Miss Hawaii for bringing this forward. It's long time overdue. Mahalo.
Okay, thank you. Next up, we have Common Cause Hawaii in support.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Sandy Ma for Common Cause Hawaii. We stand on our written testimony in support of SB 939. We have to recognize and understand our history in order to move forward. Thank you. And we're available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, we also have a number of organizations and individuals all in support. The only one we have here to testify today is Matthew Geiger in support. We're not on. Okay. And he is not on anymore. So, members, any questions? If not, moving on to SB 12.
I'm sorry, Representative. Samantha, Miss Hawaii is on the call. She is on the thing.
She did not indicate she wanted to testify, but Samantha, did you want to say something about this bill?
Yes, thank you. I'm wondering if I maybe selected written testimony instead of selecting that I would be here on Zoom, but I am here, so thank you so much for giving me the time to speak. Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. I would like to just again thank you for your efforts, not only in this meeting, but in yesterday's meeting, passing the resolutions to condemn anti-Asian hate and to assert that racism is a public health crisis. These issues are issues that I'm passionate about because all of them are about ending racial disparity and inequality in Hawaii, which is what Juneteenth is about. Recognizing this day, a monumental day in US history, will serve to better educate all Hawaii residents on the history of our country, how it impacts what we're seeing today and what we can do about it. We believe that recognizing any challenges that any minority communities face just sends a message of solidarity and lets people know that we are here to listen to each and every one of them.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to SB 1243 ST2 HD1 relating to the phase out of private correctional facilities. First up, we have the Hawaii Correctional System Oversight Commission in support. Mark Patterson? Nope. Okay, not present. Next, we have PSD with comments.
We're here, Representative. This is Tommy Johnson, the Deputy Director of Corrections. I would like to say two things. One, there is one typo on the first line of our sentence. We refer to House Draft 2. It should be House Draft 1. We'd ask the committee to please view our testimony closely on page 2.
So you're not coming through. We can't hear you. It's very garbled.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Is that better?
Yeah, that's much better.
Okay, sorry about that. My apologies.
You're fully vaccinated.
What I was saying was, we sent our written comments provided. I indicated that on line 1, there is a one typo. It refers to Senate Draft 2. That should be Senate Draft 1. That's my apologies. I should have caught that. On page 2, we provide specific language for suggested amendments to this measure, and we will stand by for any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you. Next up, we have Community Alliance on Prisons with comments.
Aloha. I'm Kat Brady, testifying on behalf of Community Alliance on Prisons. You know, this bill really changed. It was a bill that had major community support because we would have phased out banishing our people to the Sonoran Desert or someplace else abroad. Unfortunately, when it got to the House, it totally morphed and it became a bill about building prisons. And to soften the community, they added a few things that we've always been talking about, which is cultural rehabilitation, reentry, things like that. But the bottom line is the bill still pushes the building of more facilities, building more human cages, and that is not going to solve our problems. Research all shows that people who are incarcerated are more likely to continue recidivating because incarceration is criminal college. We hope that you either fix this bill, get it back to where it was, or usher it out. Thank you so much. Have a nice evening.
Okay, thank you. Next up, we have ACLU of Hawaii in support.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Mandy Fernandez on behalf of the ACLU. We will stand on our written testimony in support. We're available for any questions.
Thank you. Members, we have a number of organizations in support and with comments and a large number of individuals in support with a couple opposed and a couple with comments. The two that are here, we have two individuals here. The first up is Samantha Nyland in support.
Mahalo. Yes, ending private prisons is something I support because private prisons disproportionately affect minority communities. And unfortunately, prison is something that we do need in our society. There's not much we can do about that, but what we can do is ensure that we are working towards ending mass incarceration by ensuring that no one is profiting from the incarceration of our citizens. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Carrie Ann Shirota with comments. Okay, not present. Members, any questions? Fair board.
The Deputy Director of Public Safety, please. Speaking of
I'm
cost,
here.
profiting, what is the local per diem cost for a prisoner here versus the prisoners on the mainland? Do you recall the latest numbers of those?
It's $219 a day here, and it's slightly more than $80, if I'm not mistaken, a day on the mainland for the exact same services, food, programs.
So you said 219 locally. Did you say $80?
A little over $80 a day, that is correct.
$80. Okay, I can see why the bill got morphed a bit. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Welcome.
I have a question for the Hawaii Correctional Oversight Commission. Is there someone who testifies? No.
No, unfortunately not.
Is there, I guess, from the correctional facility, I just wanted to find out, is there any funding for the Hawaii Correctional Oversight Commission to do this work, to create this phase-out plan?
So correctional, they were supposed to show up, but no one showed up. So
Okay.
there's really nobody.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sorry. All right, if no further questions, let's move on to SB 664, SB1, HD1 relating to public safety. First up, we have the Department of Accounting and General Services in support.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair Matayoshi, members of the committee. Kurt Otaguro, State Comptroller. Department of Accounting and General Services is in strong support of SB 664. We believe that a new facility will provide the state with an opportunity to provide inmates with a healing and a subsequent transformational program that will provide successful integration back into the community. Happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you. Next up, we have PSD with comments.
Hello, Chair. Again, this is Tommy Johnson, Deputy Director for Corrections for Public Safety. The Department of Public Safety stands on its written comments in support of this measure only as it relates to the need for a new jail for Oahu to alleviate the persistent overcrowding and to provide adequate rehabilitative programs.
Yep, thank you. Next up, we have Office of the Public Defender in opposition.
Thank you again, representatives. We stand on our written testimony in opposition in part and in support in part. Otherwise, we are available for questions.
Okay, thank you. Next up, we have Miyawaki Group in support. Okay, not present. Next up, Community Alliance on Prisons in opposition.
Aloha. There's my video. Aloha, Chair and members of the committee. Kat Brady testifying on behalf of Community Alliance on Prisons in strong opposition to this measure. This is all about pushing a humongous jail on Oahu, where the population of Oahu currently is 76% are either pretrial detainees or probation violators. This bill is really about short-term construction jobs in exchange for long-term generational harm. We know how our prison system operates, and this is something, if you build it, you will fill it. So we are really against this. The Department of Public Safety reports that in 2020, 40% of all the people admitted to jail statewide reported living either unsheltered or in transitional or emergency shelters. What are we doing? We're using our jails for housing for people who live unsheltered, it's the de facto mental health center on Oahu. This is not what jails are about. This is really terrible, and we need to really look carefully at what we do. The community has been totally left out of this entire process. What this takes is out of cell thinking and courage to reimagine a system that heals rather than harms. Mahalo.
Okay, thank you. Next up, we have ACLU of Hawaii in opposition.
Afternoon, Mandy Fernandez on behalf of the ACLU of Hawaii. We'll stand on our written testimony in opposition to this measure, but we're available for any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Members, we have a number of individuals, mostly in opposition, one in support. But the only one here we have is Carrie Ann Shirota in opposition. I don't think she's here. Yep, okay, I guess we have no individuals here. Members, any questions? Go forward.
Kat Brady, please. Kat, I missed your testimony.
I'm here.
You usually
Aloha.
begin your testimony with reminding us of how many prisoners are incarcerated, either here or on the mainland. Have you got those latest statistics?
Yes, I do. The total population of people incarcerated here and on the continent, our people on the continent, 4,075 people. And there are currently 1,075 people who are serving their sentences thousands of miles from their homes, their loved ones, and for Kanaka Maoli, far, far from their ancestral lands.
Okay, at $80 a day versus $220. But my question, Kat, follows what you said, that de facto jails are becoming basically the mental health and otherwise homeless and other residual social and other penalized issues.
Yes.
Kat, this is still for you. What is the alternative? Because I don't think the police
This is Mitchell.
is someone is wanting to speak, or I can.
I think it's a technology glitch.
A technology glitch. Because I was going to say, the de facto fact that you said is so true. The prisons have become a dumping ground for people with mental health, homeless, and otherwise social problems, which otherwise we don't take care of. What is the alternative? Unless we have more space, where do we put all these people? Even though, as I was saying, HPD doesn't even want to do this, but they do it, they arrest them. The system has nowhere to put them. The mental health people don't have a space for them.
They shouldn't be in the system. We need to deal with people who have public health and problems in a medical modality. So when somebody is mentally ill, we do not want to send them to jail because they are the most likely to be put in the hole, in lockdown. And that is where people decompensate. This is a very dangerous thing that we're doing. And we can see now that, mental health issues are really blossoming in the community, especially with COVID. So we have to be very mindful of what people need.
Thank you, Kat, and for your enthusiasm that is never lessened. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, members. Any other questions? Rep. Nakamura.
I have a question for the Department of Public Safety. I wanted to find out how much did the legislature previously authorize for the new Oahu Community Correctional Center?
So far, we've spent about $9.8 million in planning and design. No money has been appropriated to build the facility at this time. It would be too premature in the process.
I see. And what is the estimated cost for the facility?
Somewhere, depending on the size of the final design and the type of bed spaces, hard versus soft beds, community versus prison beds, you're looking at between 450 to, I think it was $600 million range. But I also should stress that this is a replacement for the jail. So we're looking at more community-based bed spaces, which is open dorm type bed spaces, as opposed to hard cell type bed spaces.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you, members. If there are no further questions, we'll move on to SB 1100 ST1 HD1 relating to insurance data security. First up, we have the DCCA's Insurance Division in support.
Good afternoon, Chair Nakashima, Vice Chair Matayoshi, and members of the committee. The department supports this administration bill. We stand on our written testimony. I will add that prior to this hearing, we were informed that there is an inadvertent amendment that was added to the bill, and we can provide the committee a correction to that amendment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next up, we have American Council of Life Insurers with comments.
Chair,
Yep, we can hear you, Orin.
Orange Kimoto here. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. ACLI stands on its written testimony commenting on the bill. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
Okay, thank you. Members, any questions? Seeing none, moving on to SB 513, SD1, HD1 relating to the enforcement of laws. First up, we have PSD with comments.
Good afternoon. This is Deputy Director Jordan Lowe, Law Enforcement, PSD. We stand by our submitted testimony, but would like to stress the need to have funds appropriated for the hiring of specialized personnel for the detection, storage, and disposal of these illegal fireworks. Without these appropriations, we would not be able to have a viable program to disrupt the flow of illegal fireworks into the state. I'm available for any questions. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That's the only testifier we have today. Members, any questions? Okay, seeing none, moving on to SB 1204, SD2, HD1 relating to tax appeals. First up, we have Department of Taxation in support.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair. Thank you for hearing this bill. We're having one hell of a time trying to get volunteers for the border review. Hopefully this bill was going to alleviate that. And thank you very much. I'm here to answer any questions if you have any.
Okay, thank you. Next up, we have Tax Foundation of Hawaii with comments. Not present. Members, any questions? Okay, seeing none, moving on to SB 516, SD1, HD1 relating to education. First up, we have the DOE in support.
Good afternoon, Chair Nakashima, Vice Chair Matayoshi, and members of the committee. I'm Terry Ushijima, Interim Assistant Superintendent with the Department of Education, testifying on behalf of Superintendent Christina Kishimoto. Sorry about that, my camera wasn't on. We stand by our written testimony and offer comments on SB 516, SD1, HD1. In order to meet the reporting requirements in this measure, the department will need to explore our current data collection options and modify them to generate the requested reports. Due to the scope of this effort, the department anticipates that additional time and resources will be needed. The attainment of industry recognized credentials by students in high school as part of our quality career and technical education program is a goal of the department. We will partner with the State Board for Career and Technical Education in utilizing the statewide longitudinal data system for collecting data for industry recognized credentials. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next up, we have Hawaii Kids Can in support.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committees. Hawaii Kids Can stands on a written testimony in strong support of SB 516. Earning an industry recognized credential has been linked to numerous benefits for students, including 1, the probability of graduating from high school on time, 2, an increase in the probability of CTE students enrolling in and graduating from community college and enrolling in university, and finally, an increase in wages for individuals who are at least 24 years old. Credentials also allow for vertical linkages between K-12 and higher ed to provide early credit. For example, a K-12 student in Florida who earns a Cisco Certified Network Associate certification would receive college credit toward an associate's degree in computer engineering technology or network services technology, which is linked to a bachelor's degree in information systems technology or similar bachelor's level computer engineering degrees. Quality attainment data for industry recognized credentials helps to ensure all students have the opportunity to compete for careers in high wage, high demand fields. SB 516 will give local students a stronger chance to move into challenging economic waters ahead. Thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Members, any questions? Not, we are moving on to SB 1311, SD2, HD1, relating to sustainable schools. First up, we have the Hawaii State Energy Office with comments. Not present. Next up, we have Department of Education with comments.
Hello, Chair Nakashima, Vice Chair Matayoshi, Randy Tanaka, DOE, on behalf of Superintendent Kishimoto. Thank you for your time. We stand by our testimony, stand ready to answer any questions you may have. And once again, thank you for supporting the Department of Education. Aloha.
Okay, thank you. Next up, Hawaii Farm Bureau in support.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. The Hawaii Farm Bureau will stand on its written testimony in support.
Okay, thank you. Next up, Our Revolution Hawaii in support. Okay, not present. Members, that's all the testimony we have. Any questions? Seeing none, we'll move on to SB 806 HD1 relating to public school lands. First up, we have the DOE in support.
Hello, Vice Chair Matayoshi, Chair Nakashima. Thank you for taking our testimony on behalf of Superintendent Kishimoto. Thank you for your time. We stand by for any questions that you may have. Aloha.
Okay, thank you. Next up, Attorney General's Office with comments.
Hi, thank you. Chair Nakashima, Vice Chair Matayoshi, members of the committee, I'm Melissa Coloni. Department offers comments today. Essentially, this bill is not necessary because the department has already initiated condemnation proceedings. The parties have reached a settlement, which is being reduced to writing, and that will require court approval and the issuance of a judgment. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Members, any questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to SB 1395, SD2, HD1, relating to boards and commissions. First up, we have the Department of Human Services with comments.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, the committee, Joseph Campos, Deputy Director of the Department of Human Services. We stand on our written testimony providing comments, and I'm available if you have any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next up, ERS with comments.
Chair, Vice Chair, this is Tom Williams of the ERS. We stand on our written testimony providing comments, and I'm available, of course, to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
Next up, Department of Transportation with comments.
Thank you, Chair. David Rodriguez, Department of Transportation. We stand on our written comments and available to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Members, any questions? Dr. Mora, did you have questions? Okay. All right, hearing none, we'll move on to SB 400 SD1 HD1 relating to campaign finance reports. First up, we have the Campaign Spending Commission in support.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. My name is Gary Kam, and I'm here on behalf of the Campaign Spending Commission. We would ask that the committee reinstate the 10 days in lines 5, 7, 10, and 12 of this bill. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next up, we have Common Cause Hawaii in support.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Sandy Ma for Common Cause Hawaii. We stand in our written testimony in support of SB 400 SD1 HD1. We also request that this committee restore the original language of the bill, asking for reports to be due 10 calendar days before elections. And I'm available to answer any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Members, we have a number of individuals in support, but none present. Any questions? Okay, seeing none, we're moving on to SB 401 HD1 relating to violations of campaign finance laws. First up, Campaign Spending Commission in support.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, Gary Kam on behalf of the commission. We will stand on our written testimony in support. Thank you.
Okay, next up, Common Cause Hawaii in support.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Sandy Ma for Common Cause Hawaii. We stand on our written testimony in support of SB 401 HD1. We believe that increasing the fines against PACs and super PACs will be an effective deterrent against them in their deep pockets. I'm available for any questions. Thank you.
Okay, members, again, a number of individuals in support, but none present. Any questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to SB 402 HD1 relating to reimbursements for expenditures by committees. We have the exact same testifiers again, the Campaign Spending Commission in support.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, Gary Kam on behalf of the commission. The commission stands on its written testimony in support. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Common Cause Hawaii in support.
Good afternoon again. Sandy Ma for Common Cause Hawaii. We stand in our written testimony in support of SB 402 HD1. We believe that itemizing reimbursements will allow for more transparency in the elections processes. Thank you very much, and I'm available for any questions.
Okay, thank you. Again, a number of individuals, all in support, none present. Members, any questions? All right, seeing none, moving on to SB 405, SC1 HD1 relating to campaign contributions. Once again, Campaign Spending Commission in support.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Gary Cannon on behalf of the commission. The commission will stand on its written testimony in support. Thank you.
Okay, and one more time, Common Cause Hawaii in support.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Sandy Ma for Common Cause Hawaii. We stand on our written testimony in support of SB 405 SD1 H21. We do ask for this bill to be amended to its original form. We feel that its original form will fully, more appropriately provide for the underfunded Hawaii election campaign fund. I'm available to answer any questions. Thank you.
Okay, and just to vary it up a little bit, LGBT caucus of the Democratic Party of Hawaii in support.
Good afternoon, Representative. Thank you. Michael Galoy on behalf of the LGBT caucus, Democratic Party of Hawaii. Always happy to provide color for the hearing. We stand in strong support of this bill, but we do request we stand in solidarity with Common Cause and ask for the to reinstate the original language to fund the underfunded Hawaii Campaign Fund. Mahalo for the opportunity to testify. Have a good afternoon.
Okay, and that's all the testifiers we have for this bill. Number of individuals in support, none present. Members, any questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to SB 406, SD1 HD1 relating to the Campaign Spending Commission staff. First up, Campaign Spending Commission in support.
Good afternoon again, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Gary Cannon on behalf of the commission. The commission stands on its written testimony in support. Thank you.
Okay, and members, that's all the testifiers we have for this measure. Any questions? Rev. Nakamura.
I have a question for Gary Cam. This bill talks about for persons who are employed or contracted by the Campaign Spending Commission to do day-to-day functions. What kind of contracts do you do?
What kind of day-to-day functions do we do?
No, contracts.
So the contracts are mainly when we have contested case hearings and we need to hire a hearing officer. If the commission chooses to go that route, then that's usually via contract. We've had investigative work done via contract. It was a memorandum of agreement, I think, with the Attorney General's office. But those are the types of contract work that we have.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to SB 560 HD1 relating to ranked choice voting. First up, Common Cause Hawaii in support.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Sandy Ma for Common Cause Hawaii. We stand on our written testimony in support of SB 560 HD1, which actually establishes ranked choice voting for a limited set of elections for special federal elections and special elections of vacant county council seats. Ranked choice voting is used for over 30 jurisdictions. Hawaii Democratic Party's party-run presidential primary employed ranked choice voting in 2020. We hope that this committee will move this bill forward. I'm available to answer any questions. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Members, we have a number of individuals writing in support, mostly in support, some opposition, some comments. Only one here to testify is Bart Dame in support.
Aloha, members. I'm testifying as an individual. I would like to make that clear up front. But I'd like to highlight a few points from my testimony. First is I'd like to call attention to what I think is the central policy question. And on page 2 of my testimony, I have that in bold. The question is, do we want a voting process that allows for a runoff between leading candidates? Or do we want a voting process that increases the odds for a less popular candidate to win under the conditions of a crowded and splintered field? As I have read through the testimony from previous hearings, I have seen the opposition seems to come from people who believe that their candidates would have a better chance of winning in a splintered field because they admit that they hold minority views, and that provides a better chance. I suggest that when we look at that logic, it is in opposition to democratic principle that people should be elected according to who has the broader support in the public. And then the practical question becomes whether ranked choice voting provides an efficient mechanism for determining that outcome, who has the broader support. Unfortunately, our current subset of elections that fill vacancies in the congressional seats or county seats are a single round of voting, which allows for a very splintered field and allows for someone to get a plurality of votes with only a small percentage of the actual votes cast. There's been mention of the Democratic Party's use of ranked choice voting in our recent presidential primary. I'm speaking as an individual, but I was deeply involved in planning of all phases of that election and can answer people's questions or concerns. There's concern raised about whether it is a complicated process. Actually, we found that voters were able to mark their ballots very easily. They knew their own ranking of preferences and the various candidates running for president. What became more confusing to them was how the votes would be tabulated and candidates be eliminated. And I provide attachment A, which shows you how that was carried out in our first congressional tabulation of votes. And I'm available to answer questions either here or if people want to contact me directly. Thank you very much for this chance to testify.
Thank you. Members, any questions? Seeing none, we'll move on to SB 135 SC2 HD1 relating to telecommunication. We have one testifier, Office of Enterprise Technology Services, in support.
I am Caroline Julian Freitas on behalf of the Office of Enterprise Technology Services and CIO Doug Murdoch, and we stand on our testimony and support.
Thank you. Members, any questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to SB 717 SD1 HD1 relating to the Hawaiian Homes Commission Act. We have first up DHHL with comments.
Aloha, Chair Nakashima and Vice Chair Matayoshi. This is Lehua Kinilau Kano on behalf of Chair Isla, just standing on our written comments.
Okay, thank you. Members, any questions? Rep. Nakamura.
I have a question for DHHL. Lehua, I wanted to just clarify, are you saying that DHHL is already doing this? That you have a digital database and it can be accessed?
Yes, Representative Nakamura, we do have a system in place now. At the time when this bill was first introduced a few years back, the neighbor islands did not have access to that system, but now the neighbor islands do have, so all the files are stored on Oahu and the neighbor island offices have access, digital access to those files.
So do you believe this bill is not necessary?
We believe it's not necessary. There are some items in here that we're trying to get from the introducer. I think what she was asking for was that our online waitlist right now, as an example, is in a PDF format. So one of the requests was maybe we could just submit it in like an Excel spreadsheet so it could be sorted. Those types of issues we can address separately. It kind of depends on to the extent and whether or not they wanted all the public, because there's highly sensitive information in these files. We want to make sure that those files are protected. And so again, right now, it's just the neighbor island offices who have access. It doesn't allow for an outside, a lessee or an applicant to access their files digitally right now.
Thank you.
Okay, members, any other questions? Rep. Ward.
Lehua, just a follow-up to that question. If you looked at the amount of digitized records now versus those that you want to do, what percentage of your records now are digitized?
You know, I think you asked Chair Isla that question when the House bill was heard. It's a significant amount, Representative Ward, but keep in mind that as new applications come in or new transactions are completed, for example, if there's a lease transfer or a new designation of successor, all of those need to be constantly updated. So it's not as if it stays static. is a good response. That's the best I can answer for you.
I don't recall Mr. Arla saying, well, it was over half, or is it 75%? Would you roughly estimate any percentage? Because if it's a percentage, clearly the bill is not necessary.
I don't want to mischaracterize the percentage. It's a significant amount. I can try to ask our IT staff if they have an idea of a percentage, but just to give you an idea, Representative, the legislature asked us a couple years ago to do a lease transfer study. We literally had to go through all of those records, and that was done using our digitized online system. So it's a significant amount. I don't have an exact percentage.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, moving on to SB 1021 SD2 HD1 relating to burials. First up, we have DCCA.
Aloha, Chair Nakashima and Vice Chair Matayoshi and members of the committee. I'm Candice Ito. I'm an executive officer with the department. I apologize that I'm having some connection issues, so I don't have my video working, but the department appreciates the intent of and offers comments to this bill. The department is requesting a change to some language on page 18 to provide some clarity and consistency with the definition of traditional Hawaiian burial. We thank you for this opportunity to testify, and if you have any questions, I'll be present.
Okay, thank you. Next up, we have the Hawaii Funeral and Cemetery Association in opposition.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair Matayoshi and Chair Nakashima. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. I'm speaking on behalf of the Hawaii Funeral and Cemetery Association today. We represent 14 licensed mortuaries in the state of Hawaii and 10 cemeteries. Our opposition to this bill is, and with 3 components of the bill, 2 are related to dispositions, new dispositions that are coming in to handle death in the state of Hawaii. One is alkaline hydrolysis. The other one is natural organic reduction, which is human composting. With the human composting, we're concerned about regulatory agency requirements on who will be able to run these facilities and how the 1,000 to 2,000 pounds of compost will be released from these facilities and how those will end up in the community and where they'll be buried or spread. In regards to alkaline hydrolysis, our concern is twofold with this. One is the water discharge into the sewer system, the pH levels, but more importantly is the human remains that are going to be taken out of this facility for the use of traditional Hawaiian burials, which we fully support as an industry. However, currently there's no burial permit required for cremation, and this process is considered water cremation. And with skeletal remains being taken out of facility, we're concerned that their Department of Health needs to have a burial permit attached to this so we know where those remains will be placed in the community. In regards to the third component of the mandate on how cemeteries will need to sell for this type of practice, we feel that's very problematic in the way cemeteries are mapped, how they're designed, what our requirements are, and next to kin authorizations. We've outlined and detailed our opposition on all of this in our testimony. We've also included California's regulation in regards to alkaline hydrolysis, and we encourage the legislature to take a good look at that along with the Department of Health before moving this bill forward. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Next up, we have Aloha Mortuary in support.
Aloha, hi, committee members. Thank you for giving me this time. I stand in full support of this bill. I believe that, well, one, I want to address something really quickly. This bill does not include human composting. And we live in Hawaii, we're surrounded by water. We as Hawaiians, we have always practiced our culture in ways that maybe might not be formatted towards normal mortuary services. So having a technology that we're able to preserve the EV and bones being introduced into Hawaii, and might I remind the senators that it's already been in use through the DOE and also the UH. So the technology is already in Hawaii. There's no adverse effects. It's been proven, and if medical institutions like the Mayo Clinic have been using it for over 20 years, I feel that Hawaii and Hawaiians and the people of Hawaii deserve the right and the ability to use a final disposition method that the pH and the effluent that's coming out is sterile and clean. The regulatory standards that are continuously addressed can be addressed through the Department of Health, and I believe that they're going to find it particularly easy to have these regulatory standards, given that the embalming disposition, which includes hazardous chemicals, go down the sewer waste. And then you have the latter of the disposition, which includes cremation, which has, air pollutants that go into the air. So I think the regulatory standards can be addressed quite easily with the Department of Health, and then affording the Native Hawaiians and the people of Hawaii to go out in a medium and practice their traditional rights is very important to Hawaii in general. So not allowing the consumers to have this option, I believe, is a disservice to everybody here. And so I just strongly support this bill, and I hope you folks do as well. Thank you so much for your time.
Okay, thank you. Next up, we have Dodo Mortuary Inc. in opposition.
Yes. Hi. Thank you, Chairman Nakashima, Vice Chair Matayoshi, committee members. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. On behalf of, my name is Mitchell Dodo, Vice President, Operation Manager of Dodo Mortuary here on the Big Island of Hawaii. Our main location is in Hilo, and we maintain offices in a crematory, cremation services, a West Hawaii business on the west side and the Kona side of the island. On behalf of our three companies, we stand in opposition of the SB 1021 SD2 HD1. Our thoughts and our comments echo those of the Hawaii Funeral and Cemetery Association. And you have our comments in front of you, which were submitted yesterday. Basically, we oppose passing of this bill because of the lack of regulation. It's been stated so many times already from those in support that no additional regulation is needed. We feel that to be untrue. The two standard methods of disposition of deceased human remains, being embalming, is regulated by the State Department of Health. Crematories are regulated by the Clean Air Branch and the Department of Health. We feel if the alkaline hydrolysis process is passed, it has the potential to lead into harm to the consumer. I'm sure that the people who are introducing this bill have good intentions. There's some pretty big names behind it, long time professionals in the funeral industry, but we worry about this will open the door to other people who may not have as good intentions as they. And that's when the consumer again can get hurt. For example, two people may be put into an alkaline hydrolysis unit, and disintegrated, I guess, at the same time. The potential is endless as to what kind of havoc that could be wreaked for the consumer. We're just asking, hey, wait a minute. Stop, take a look, and really give it some serious thought before passing this bill. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. We have next Fisher and Associates LLC in support. Dean Fisher testifying on behalf of Fisher and Associates and as an individual.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. Thank you for your time today and allowing me to testify in strong support of SB 1021 SD2 HD1. I am Dean Fisher. I'm a licensed funeral director. I have a 37-year career in the funeral industry, and I've worked at Mayo Clinic and UCLA David Geffen School of Medicine. Both of these great institutions invested in the resomation alkaline hydrolysis technology. It's the same exact technology that Aloha Mortuary has researched and is seeking approval for. The technology was reviewed by the experts at these institutions and approved by scientists, engineers, and multiple committees. It has a 15-year perfect operational and safety record, and it has completed over 5,000 dispositions during this time. We've also tested the water over 30 times at UCLA with the City of Los Angeles, and we've shared these with the Environmental Services Division here in Honolulu. Minnesota was the first state to allow alkaline hydrolysis for humans back in 2006. Since then, 20 states have followed, including Washington, Oregon, and California. The Cremation Association of North America, CANA, they modified its bylaws and rewrote the definition of cremation to include alkaline hydrolysis back in 2010. So CANA reported 8,507 cremations in Hawaii in 2018. Each cremation places an average of 534 pounds of carbon dioxide into our environment. So that's over 4.5 million pounds of CO2 going into the environment from flame crematories alone in Hawaii. You add in mercury from dental fillings, heavy metals, and polycarbons from surgical implants. This all adds to our global warming. We're finding that 60% of the cremation customers are selecting alkaline hydrolysis when given a choice over flame
Mr.
cremation.
Fisher.
Yes.
It's been 2 minutes. If you could conclude
All
your
right.
testimony, please.
Well, we thank you.
Okay, thank you. Members, we have a number of individuals all in support. First up, Bono Ledford.
Aloha, I'm Dr. Ledford. I have a practice in Hilo, Hawaii. I'm in full support of this bill. I've heard concerns about removing human remains. Well, you remove human remains when you have a flame-based cremation and you give the ashes to a family. It's the same thing. You're going to be giving the bones to the family that we can.
The same thing.
Excuse me? So it's basically the same thing. You're
Reminder,
going to
could
be giving
everyone
the
mute their
bones.
mics if they're not testifying?
You're going to be giving the bones to our families, our Hawaiian families, and we can take care of them in our traditional ways. So this is where it comes with the cultural sensitivity of how us Native Hawaiians want to take care of our loved ones when they've passed. Secondly, I've heard things about abuse of the system. Who's to say they're not putting two bodies in a flame-based cremation? Okay, so there's going to be abuse of systems all the time. Anywhere anybody wants to be a dirty person, they can do that. We're not wanting that. We just want to bring the technology that we can bring to Hawaii. We can take care of our loved ones in a manner we see fit as Native Hawaiians. And when it comes to the safety of the effluent, the fluid that comes out, you'll see people complaining it has a pH of 11. Well, guess what? If you've ever had an upset stomach and have taken Pepto-Bismol, you know, that has a pH of 11. It'll help settle your stomach, all right? The fluid comes out, it is sterile. There are no bacteria, no viruses, especially with this pandemic that we have going on. This is one of the safest ways in which we can dispose of our loved ones and take care of them in a proper and humane manner, okay? There's no regulation where the blood comes out from the embalming and goes down the drain, and that goes to our wastewater. There's no regulation when we use the bathroom at home and our feces go down the drain to a waste management system. Again, we can look at the fluid, we can take a sample of the fluid and send it to a lab to make people feel more comfortable if that's the type of regulation they want. But let us Hawaiians take care of our dead the way we see fit. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next up, we have Hina Wong Kalu in support.
Aloha, mai kako. Thank you, Chair, for this opportunity. I do stand strongly on my testimony that has been submitted. And I'd also like to point out that in light of the recent occurrences from the continent, we are hearing about anti-discrimination and other things that are looking at Asian American, even Black Lives Matter. We are talking about today in this hearing an issue that impacts our Kanaka, our Native Hawaiian community. And by not getting behind an effort to to affirm this body's capacity to impact Kanaka. That too, in and of itself, makes us as Kanaka have to work even harder to come and literally beg your consideration. So once again, I just stand on my testimony. I thank you all for your time. Please consider what you can do in our effort to give greater equity and greater capacity for us Kanaka to be whom we could possibly be in our own homeland. Mahalo.
Okay, thank you. Last up, we have Mililani Trask in support.
Aloha, Mr. Chairman. I'm so happy to be here to support this measure. Our civic clubs carried it for the first time in 2012, and it's been 8 years. One of the things I wanted to say was that we're in a win-win situation here because we're not only addressing a critical part, a critical concern of our people culturally, but we're also bringing into Hawaii clean and new technology that I think we really need badly. One of the things that I wanted to point out is that on the Senate side, 2 bills were merged. They are both Hawaiian Civic Club measures. There's no conflict, and you can see when you look at them what the overall goal is. We're trying to return to cultural practices with new and cleaner technology. No one is trying to take their mother's body to the seashore and build a big emu. In terms of concerns about natural organic reduction, it's not in this bill. We're not doing natural organic reduction, and Hawaiians traditionally would never engage in that practice. So inappropriate to point cultural fingers at Hawaiians. Why would you have a burial permit? It's not required of Asians who come to have their parents cremated. They're not required to bury them. They're allowed to take them home in canisters and keep them at their temples there. One of the things I wanted to point out is that the Department of Health, the involvement of the Department of Health makes sense. They have a regulatory role to play. And the bottom line is Department of Health has been regulating the industry since prior to statehood, but not all of the regulations that apply to this old technology would be applicable to alkaline hydrolysis. A good example are the state regulations, the state regulations for ambient air discharge. There isn't any in alkaline hydrolysis. We won't be letting gases filled with chemicals out. It's clean and green. So I'm hoping that you will support and pass this. I see in the strong opposition of the funeral industry here in Hawaii that they would like to prevent clean and green competition, but I don't think that that's the direction the state should go. And certainly Hawaiians have waited long enough. This will be the first time in 200 years we can bury an appropriate cultural way. Mahalo.
Okay, thank you. Members, any questions? Rep Ward.
Did the Department of Health testify? Or is there anyone on from the Department of Health? Not so.
I don't think so.
Then, Mr. Fisher, are you still there? Dean Fisher?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am.
In your testimony, you said that Aloha Mortuary is seeking approval for the alkaline hydrolysis. Seeking approval from who?
I said that they have researched, the Aloha Mortuary had researched the resomation technology, and that was what they were seeking approval for. Is the same technology that was being used at UCLA and Mayo Clinic. It's resomation is the name of the technology.
So the Department
Which
of Health.
is alkaline hydrolysis.
Okay, so ultimately it's the Department of Health that does this as well as all the other mortuary cremation or embalming, et cetera. Is that correct?
As far as I know, that is.
Okay. You are in the industry, so what's the cost of that machinery or the actual, well, how this alkaline hydrolysis is done? I gather there's a machine of something of some sort?
Yes, the cost of the machine is more expensive than a flame retort. But then you also have to remember that you don't have to re-brick an alkaline hydrolysis machine. So over the long run, it would equal out itself.
Okay,
You're looking at probably $350,000.
350,000. So from the man and woman on the street, what's the cost of the cremation versus embalming versus alkaline hydrolysis?
It varies by state. So in Minnesota, we're looking at, in California, cremation, they're doing it, I think, as low as around $895, where in Minnesota, it's around $2,500 for cremation.
And then the embalming and then the alkaline would be how much?
The embalming, I can't really speak for because I've been on the cremation side most of my life.
How about the alkaline hydrolysis?
Yeah, the alkaline hydrolysis, we see a slight premium that we place on that just due to takes a little bit longer time, and there's also the equipment is more expensive. So I think in Washington it's about a $250 upgrade. In California, it's going to be around a $300 upgrade. In Minnesota, it's about a $300 upgrade. A charge more than what regular cremation would be.
Oh,
but as the technology is, there's more and more machines that will be the same. I know it will be, or less.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Sure, thank you.
Any other questions? If not, we'll move on to SB 221, SD1, HD1 relating to homelessness. First, we have the Governor's Coordinator on Homelessness with comments.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair. My name is Scott Morishige, the Governor's Coordinator on Homelessness. I stand on my written testimony with comments and are available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Catholic Charities of Hawaii with comments.
Thank you, Chair and Committee. Here I come. I'm Betty Lou Larson, representing Catholic Charities of Hawaii. This bill has been changed in this draft to require the Coordinator on Homelessness to develop plans for the regional areas to end homelessness. We totally agree there should be plans and that there should be coordination. However, we feel that it really is best coming from the local areas up rather than the top down. We already see the Coordinator on Homelessness working with Partners in Care on this island and bringing together the neighbor island coalitions and bridging the gap with Partners in Care. So we see that happening now. We see the plans developing. However, if this bill does move forward, we would strongly urge that you also provide additional resources to the Governor's Coordinator on Homelessness in order to fulfill this new mandate. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And we have an individual from Hope Services, Kristen Ellis, with comments.
Aloha, thank you for the opportunity to testify. I'd like to echo what Betty Lou from Catholic Charities just said, that if this goes forward, then we'd like to request funding to make sure that the Governor's Office can meet this mandate. Also, I just wanted to say, like what we said in our written testimony, that Scott Morishige, the Governor's Coordinator on Homelessness, is very present. He already works with us. I see him at least once a week. And he's even increased his presence with COVID, which is quite a feat given that we're on the neighbor islands. So he's there, he's accessible, and it's already being done. So I just wanted to clarify that it might not be necessary and that each county already does have its own plan. That's all, and we stand in our written testimony. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That's all the that's all the testifiers we have. Members, any questions? Nakamura.
I have a question for the Governor's Coordinator on Homelessness, Scott Morishige. Scott, I wanted to ask you, do you think that the plan should be done by the county or by your office?
I apologize, Representative. I'm having a little bit of trouble hearing, and I have the volume on my computer turned up. I'm so sorry.
Do you think that the plan should be done at the county level and you coordinate, or should the plans be done by your office?
Oh, thank you. Thank you for repeating the question. As some of the other testifiers said, the counties already have their own plans for their respective regions, and I have very close coordination with the counties currently. I have a monthly standing call with the homeless coordinator in each county, and we have additional meetings where we collaborate together. Currently, as it stands, the counties are in charge of their respective planning because they know the needs of their district and the region the best. And then my office meets with them regularly and then provides support as appropriate.
If strategic plans were to be done, how much would it cost, do you think, to have county level strategic homelessness plans?
So to be able to comply with the requirements in the bill as it's drafted now, we estimate that it would be about $250,000 to be able to hire a consultant to assist us with both the development of the county and regional plans as well as the additional reporting requirements.
And without these funds, it would be difficult to implement the intent of this bill.
Yes, correct. My staff is only myself, and I have 4 other positions. And so we have a very limited budget and resources, and adding anything additional would require additional resources for us to be able to meet the mandate.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rep. Ward.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Marshige, following up, did I hear you correctly? You said your staff includes you and yourself. Is that what you said? Plus 4 something.
No, my staff is myself and 4 other positions. I have a total staff of 5 to serve the entire state
you do
for
have
our current responsibility.
And you do have a strategic plan, like I thought previously, as one of the persons said, that actually the counties are already doing this. The question is regarding this strategic plan. What an integral part of strategic plans are timelines. And this is a question I know it's difficult, but all my constituents always ask me, what does the timeline say when we will start decreasing, if you will, with possibly eliminating this phenomenon in our state? In other words, anything on your timeline for a decrease? Number 1, it's still going up. And number 2, when is it going to start going down, and when will it hopefully come to an end?
Yeah.
If
Thank
ever.
you, Representative Ward. So we have set overall targets for a decrease, and we've seen an overall statewide decrease under my tenure from 2016 to 2020 of about 18.5% statewide, including larger reductions for specific subpopulations such as families experiencing homelessness. My office currently reports annually to the legislature as well as to the governor and the mayor of each county on the status of the strategic plan, and that a link to that report was included in my testimony.
So what year are we speaking of when the decrease in the diminution of homelessness should occur? Again, this is top of mind that everybody's, when they see the homeless, they think, my God, it's getting bigger, it's not going away. When can we think that it's going to get better? And if I may.
So, Representative Ward, again, if you look back at the past 4 years, since I started this position in August of 2015, at the time that I started the first point in time count, after I started, was at the highest the state had ever seen. It was 7,900 people experiencing homelessness, and that had been 7 years of steady increases and increases by double digits. Since then, the rate of homelessness, according to point on time count, has gone down, as I mentioned, by 18.5%. And in addition, we've been able to increase the rate of placements into permanent housing from about 1/3 of all individuals coming out of homelessness when I started to now over 50% for the past 3 years. And as of February of this year, that rate is also currently at 56% exits into permanent housing placement. We need to assess the impact of the pandemic on the rate of homelessness that we're seeing statewide. We do know, if we look at historical data, that during the last time we saw a major recession in 2009, homelessness increase by over 2,100 individuals over the next 7 years. So we know that we have hard times ahead of us, and our focus is to continue to have really just a steady target on permanent housing as an end goal, and continuing to place people year by year as we have been, and continuing to review all of the data available to us, not just from the point in time count, but from multiple data sets.
But Mr. Moshiga, you see the visual effects of otherwise good statistics that you're giving, but I don't know if you read Connie Mitchell's advertiser op-ed in Sunday's paper. Basically, she said those who are drugged or alcohol or mentally ill, they are increasingly having their freedom, if you will, and I know you've testified for bills not being able to put these guys into hospitals. Their freedom is a death sentence. They're dying at age 50, 55 years old. So until that changes, I don't see how you can possibly ever win as the quote homeless czar when you've got so many of those with mental illness and drug addictions that are freely moving about our city.
Rep Ward, we're getting a little off topic.
I know, but this is the essence of what homelessness is about, because it's never going to end unless he can answer this question, or we as a legislature can answer the question. So let him have a bite at it, please.
Well, I understand, but this is not the appropriate forum for that.
It is, but it isn't. Let me put it that way. This is the core of what this bill is about and why he is the czar of homelessness. Please proceed, Mr. Morshige.
Okay, this is going to be the last question, though, since this is not on topic.
Okay, so thank you, Rep Ward, for the question. And part of my role is to coordinate with all state departments. So I work very closely with the Department of Health, and particularly the Behavioral Health Administration, the very issues that you're referencing. Within the past year, Department of Health has brought online new resources, specifically the Palakana stabilization beds at Leahi Hospital and at the Hawaii State Hospital. We're working as we speak on adding additional plans to add additional stabilization beds on Hawaii Island in West Hawaii. And part of my job is to continue making sure we can align efforts, align resources from all sides so that we are able to address those issues while also supporting our providers, both in terms of advocacy and trying to identify additional resources so they can do their job and we can give them tools they need to do their job on the front lines every day. That's exactly what we did during the pandemic. And that's what we are continuing to do through a multitude of different forums as outlined in my testimony, both frontline provider meetings that we convene on a bi-weekly basis, monthly webinars that we convene for the sector, and meetings where we bring funders and other state and county leaders together to address these issues. So these things will be top of mind, and we are addressing them by not only advocating for policy changes, as you referenced with some of the assistant community treatment laws, but also working with Department of Health to increase the number of stabilization beds we have to better serve that specific subset of the larger population.
Thank you, Mr. Morshige. You got one of the toughest jobs in the state of Hawaii. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any further questions, members? If not, we'll move on to SB 387 ST1 HD1 relating to the room confinement of children at detention and shelter facilities. First up, we have the judiciary in support. Carol, are you there?
Yeah, I did. I'm sorry. I forgot to unmute. Excuse me. Good afternoon, Chair Nakashima, Vice Chair Matayoshi, and members.
Hi, Carol. Your sound is not coming through.
Oh, it's
very
not?
softly.
Okay. Is this better?
A little bit. You might need to move the mic closer to your mouth.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Nakashima, Vice Chair Matayoshi, and members of the committee. My name is Carol Matsuoka on behalf of the Hawaii State Judiciary. SB 387 is we strongly support Senate Bill 387 as it is part of our legislative package. We stand on our written testimony and I will remain available for questions. Thank you very much for this opportunity to testify.
Thank you. Public defenders in support.
Aloha, Chair Nakashima and members of the committee. Deputy Public Defender Darcia Forrester. The Office of the Public Defender stands on our written testimony in support, noting the technical changes that were made to the bill. We are in support of the current version. Thank you.
Thank you. ACLU of Hawaii in support.
Thank you, Vice Chair, Chair, members of the committee. My name is Hope Kirpelman. I'm the Legal and Legislative Fellow with the ACLU of Hawaii. The ACLU of Hawaii very strongly supports this bill with 2 suggested amendments. The ACLU has received reports in the past of the misuse and overuse of juvenile solitary in our state. Examples include one child of Pacific Islander descent who was held in confinement for 31 days straight on the basis of solely verbal outbursts. Another child was held in solitary for 7 days because she had head lice. During this time, her suicidal ideation returned. The research is clear that solitary confinement is actively harmful. Children should not be spending 22 to 23 hours a day alone for days and weeks on end. The practice leads to and exacerbates depression, anxiety, psychological, and developmental issues. Many children in juvenile detention facilities already suffer from mental illnesses, and isolation only leads to more harm while also failing to address the underlying causes of these problems. One study found that more than half of all suicides in juvenile facilities occurred when young people were held in isolation. Solitary confinement is also counterproductive, and it does not work to deter violence. Research shows that extreme isolation actually causes increased antisocial behaviors and aggressive tendencies, and these can persist in the long term. Several jurisdictions that have reduced the use of solitary have actually witnessed a decrease in prison violence. This bill effectively bans the use of room confinement for juveniles except in limited circumstances, which would bring Hawaii into alignment with the federal First Step Act. We've offered some amendments that we think would further strengthen this bill, and we'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. That's all the testifiers we have. Members, any questions? If seeing none, we'll move on to SB 821, ST2, HD1. Members, we have no testifiers today for this measure, although we have written submitted testimony. Moving on to SB 607, ST3, HD1, relating to affordable housing. First up, we have DLNR in support. Mr. Downer, are you there?
I am, sir. Hello? Can you hear me?
Please proceed.
Can you hear me okay, or am I not loud enough?
Coming in a little soft, but we can hear you.
Okay, I'll try to do better. I'm Alan Downer. I'm the administrator of the State Historic Preservation Division, and the department stands on its written testimony in support.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have HHFTC in support.
Aloha and good afternoon. Chair Nakashima, Vice Chair Matayoshi, members of the committee. We stand on our written testimony in support of this measure. Mahalo for the opportunity.
Okay, thank you. Members, any questions? Seeing none, we'll move on to SB 866, ST2, HD1, relating to affordable housing. First up, we have the Board of Water Supply in opposition.
Thank you, Chair and members. My name is Ernie Lau, the Manager and Chief Engineer for the Honolulu Board of Water Supply. I respectfully, I'm sorry to say that we have to oppose this measure. Our mission is to provide safe, dependable, and affordable water service to our community. And for the Board of Water Supply, we are totally financially self-sufficient based on people paying their water bills, and for new developments paying the water system facilities charge or impact fees, which helps to reimburse our existing customers for the capacity they paid for in the past that the developer, a new development, can take advantage of. Over the next 30 years, we anticipate having to invest at least $5 billion plus into our water system infrastructure. And this is basically the water customers paying for that investment in the infrastructure. We understand what you're trying to do here, and we support affordable housing to be built. However, it becomes very difficult to keep water rates affordable to our customers, especially when there's a blanket mandate to basically waive these water system facilities charges for capacity for new developments and put that on that burden on existing customers. So we really struggle with the balancing of affordability for people paying their water bills, yet we have to provide an important service to our community. So we respectfully request that that an exemption be allowed for at least the boards of water supply. And I must say that our board here, for the water board here in Honolulu, they recognize the importance of affordable housing. And we have a current program that waives up to 500 units a year of affordable housing and also homeless units to be exempted from these charges. But what we can do when we have a cap on that and we know how much we will be potentially losing in terms of revenue, we can financially plan and base our water rates on that. And we do rates at a 5-year schedule. So this bill makes it pretty much open-ended. So it's very difficult to financially plan for it and to maintain affordability for our customers, more importantly. So thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Yep, thank you. Members, that's the only testifier we have. Any questions? Yep, seeing none, moving on to SB2, SD2, HD1 relating to public lands. First up, we have HHFTC in support.
Aloha, good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. HHFTC supports this important measure to expand our current exemption from the definition of public lands. It will help shave time off the development process and facilitate the projection of approximately 8,000 affordable units over the next 5 years. In our written testimony, we cite the 1998 Supreme Court case related to the state's legal authority to sell ceded lands that was validated by the Attorney General back in 1995, affirming the authority so long as it is for a public purpose. Homeownership on a widespread basis is such a public purpose under Article 11 of the state constitution and Section 5 of the Admissions Act. I would like to clarify that it is not our intention to sell ceded lands. This measure is to facilitate the development process to address the housing crisis that we're in. Target projects may be in lands where major infrastructure already exists or could be one of the 3 priority areas identified by the TOD Council, a 25-member body of which OHA participates and DHHL is a statutory member of. According to the 2019 housing study by SMS, Native Hawaiians make up about 26% or 117,000 of the 455,000 households in Hawaii. Of the Native Hawaiians surveyed, only 11% live on Hawaiian homestead lands. There is a huge opportunity for us to accelerate housing that will, by virtue of our existing programs, support Native Hawaiians. Last year, HHFTC financed about 1,000 low-income housing tax credit units. Of the total 34,000 existing low-income housing tax credit units, nearly 38% or 13,000 of the occupants were Native Hawaiians or other Pacific Islanders in 2019. This is up from 6,900 or 36% in 2015. So in conclusion, as we deliver affordable housing units to the market, we are, by virtue of our existing programs, also helping Native Hawaiians. Thank you very much for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you. Next up, we have OHA in opposition.
Aloha. Can you guys hear me?
Yep, go ahead, please.
Okay. Aloha, Chair, members of the committee, Sterling Wong, Chief Advocate for the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. We submitted written testimony in opposition to SB2. In summary, OHA is opposing this bill because it would result in the diminishment of the ceded lands corpus for which our beneficiaries have unrelinquished claims. While we appreciate this bill's efforts to address the critical affordable housing needs of our state, its proposed 9-year leases are tantamount to the sale of our ancestral lands without addressing our people's claims first. The state has passed numerous acts over the years committing itself to reconciling with Native Hawaiians over the loss of ceded lands. If the state is committed to upholding these promises, it should not reduce the ceded lands corpus and disadvantage Native Hawaiians in any reconciliation or negotiation process moving forward with the state. We propose amendments to mitigate our concerns in our written testimony. We note that our proposed amendments are very open-ended and do not necessarily conflict with federal fair housing laws. Mahalo for the opportunity to testify, and I'll be available for questions. Mahalo.
Thank you. Up next, we have Kalahui Hawaii Political Action Committee in opposition.
Aloha, Chair Nakashima and Vice Chair Matayoshi, members of the committee. Kalahui Hawaii stands on their testimony in strong opposition to this measure. Kanaka Maoli, despite so-called efforts to provide affordable housing for Kanaka Maoli, we still make up 40% of the houseless. And I think more effort should be given to providing funding for the Department of Hawaiian Homelands in order to address the issue of houselessness among Native Hawaiians and their descendants, to address that. But I also wanted to just say that taking the lands out of the purview of the 171 Hawaii Revised Statutes, it also takes it out of public purview. So this measure would give the governor and HHFDC way too much power over Hawaiian lands. And just because the Supreme Court said that you guys can sell the lands, doesn't make it right. It was seized. We are people still working towards being a recognized nation, and these are issues that we hope to address once we become that nation. Mahalo, aloha.
Yeah,
Thank you for the time.
Yep, thank you. Next up, we have Hope Services Hawaii in opposition.
Aloha. Thank you for the opportunity to testify in opposition to this bill. As a homeless services nonprofit, we appreciate the intention of this bill and generally would support plans to promote affordable housing and accessibility. However, not at the expense of Native Hawaiians and of taking ceded lands away from those who have a rightful claim to it and who are disproportionately overrepresented among people experiencing homelessness. According to the National Alliance to End Homelessness, Native and Hawaiians and Pacific Islanders are the most disproportionately affected race in the entire country when it comes to homelessness, being 14 times as likely to experience homelessness as whites. And we would stand in opposition to anything that would further exacerbate that racial disparity and that would take these lands and use them for something other than their intended purpose. We support affordable housing and we support access to it, but there are other ways to do it. And thank you very much for hearing my testimony.
Yeah, thank you. Next, we have Community Alliance Partners in opposition.
Aloha, my name is Kaikea Kaliki Blakemore. I am one of the executive members of CAP. I was asked by our advocacy chair to testify on behalf of CAP. I just wanted to kind of bring to this committee's attention the fact, again, that Native Hawaiians are the ones who are disproportionately homeless in these lands. And the idea that this housing is supposed to help Native Hawaiians, I think, is somewhat false if we really look at even what Senator Stanley Chang had said about his pilot project, that the thousands of people on the wait list for DHHL, which has been historically underfunded, would not be able to afford the homes proposed in the pilot project that was paired with this bill. As representatives of housing on Hawaii Island, we understand that this may become sort of an example of what could happen here, and we do not support taking away already stolen lands from Indigenous people in the name of creating housing for those people who are actually the ones experiencing homelessness because of this land theft. To those who are saying that the Supreme Court said this was okay, I want to harken back to Oha's comment that this is like selling a stolen car, and essentially the individuals who stole the car are telling you it's okay. And there are international courts looking into this that validate through other documentation that this is potentially illegal at an international level and at a national level. So, you know, the law can get really muddy. I want to also reflect back at Jean Ward's question about how we end homelessness. And a lot of times in our coalitions, we talk about the revolving door of homelessness. We had so many minimum wage bills killed this legislative season, and we have one left, HB 676, which may or may not be heard without talking to Chair Onishi. That $12 minimum wage is about half of what a living wage is in Hawaii. Native Hawaiian people are disproportionately impoverished and homeless and dying in the prisons that in this hearing, we spoke about it's cheaper to house them on the mainland. People are dying in these situations for for issues of poverty, essentially. And I want to address the fact that we consider homeless people homeless because they are crazy or because they are villainous or lazy.
You conclude your testimony.
Thank you. Thank you. Many homeless people become crazy because they are experiencing poverty. And so the solution to ending homelessness and poverty is a living wage in Hawaii, justice for Native people who have lost their homes, and affordable housing that is truly affordable for our area median incomes in these areas. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, members. We have a number of individuals, about 40 of them in opposition, a couple of comments and one in support. Members, any questions? Prep board.
Sterling, sorry, the HFDC, the one that said that 38% of the public housing is Hawaiian. I think that was HFDC. Was
LIHTC project.
The LIHTC project? Thank you, Nuku.
Aloha, Representative Ward.
Yes, the 38% you noted of public housing was for Hawaiians. Actually, how many units were you speaking of, even though this 38% represents a rather large amount? How many units are you talking about? 38% of 100, 200, what?
One moment. So according to our survey, it was roughly 38%, which is 12,970 of the 34,196 occupying LIHTC units in 2019.
And that was over a span of how many years? Do you have that? Oh,
that's for 2019, and then I cited the 2015 figures as a comparison for the growth.
Chair, I want to follow up with Mr. Wong, Sterling Wong from OHA.
Okay.
Mr. Wong, are you there?
I am here. Aloha.
What do you think of that? Look, all the Hawaiians are getting all this land versus what otherwise your position has been to have more land without having the claims introduced versus getting the land into this building of public housing. Any comments on that public housing versus the rights of the land?
Yeah, so thank you for that question, Representative Ward. I would say, we're dealing with two separate issues. One, we're dealing with the housing needs of our beneficiaries, which, we really want to engage in these discussions. But the other issue is the claims of our people, which is a bigger issue, right? And I would say, ultimately, if the state is really looking into addressing the housing needs of our people, I think someone else that's already testified commented something along similar. But if you really want to address the housing needs of Native Hawaiians, fully fund DHHL, fully fund the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. Much of the projects that, we provided $40 million in housing services over the last 10 years, we could do more with more funds. But ultimately, if you really want to solve housing for Native Hawaiians, give us back our lands that were stolen. I think that's where we would put our families and our ohana.
One last question.
Okay.
How many potential lands are in jeopardy by this bill if it does pass?
Well, that's a great question, Representative Ward. In looking at the bill, it seems to be very open-ended. I do not see very much limitations into what could be put into these amendments in terms of land.
So it could roll over and again to numerous lands.
Yeah, that's my understanding.
Thank you, Mr. Wong.
Thank you.
Okay, members, any other questions? If not, we'll be moving on to SB 754 relating to operating a vehicle while intoxicated. First up, we have DOT at Sniffen in support.
Thank you, Chair. David Rodriguez with the Department of Transportation, and we stand on our testimony and written support and available to answer any questions. Aloha.
Thank you. Next up, Office of the Public Defender in opposition.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair Matayoshi, Chair, and members of the committee. The Office of the Public Defender stands on our written testimony in opposition. We are available for questions.
Thank you. Next up, Honolulu Prosecutor's Office in support.
Thank you, Chair. Deputy Prosecutor Tricia Nakamatsu on behalf of the Honolulu Prosecuting Attorney's Department, filling in for Mark Tom, will stand as well in support. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next up, HPD in support.
Afternoon, Chair.
Lieutenant James Slater, Honolulu Police Department's Traffic Division. Like DOT, we stand in written support of this bill.
Thank you. Next up, we have Mothers Against Drunk Driving, Hawaii, in support. Carol, are you there? Okay, maybe we'll come back to your.
Yeah. Okay, I'm
Okay.
here, but I'm not here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we
Okay.
can, if we can see you too.
Okay. Good afternoon, Vice Chair Matayoshi and members of the committee. My name is Carol McNamee, and I'm here today representing MAD, Mothers Against Drunk Driving, in Hawaii. And you have MAD's testimony in support of the bill this afternoon, and I just wanted to stress two things. Number one, neither MAD nor this bill is against drinking. We are against driving after drinking. We ask people to plan ahead so they don't get themselves in a position of having to drive to their destination after consuming alcohol. With a lower blood alcohol of 0.05, we believe that more people will do the smart thing and make sure that they will not get behind the wheel after drinking alcohol. And number two, MAD's adage, if you want to call it that, is no more victims. Victim family stories are absolutely heart-wrenching. The story actually that motivated me to start MAD in Hawaii was a horrible 1981 helo crash, which killed the wife of Dr. Michael Irwin, who was a psychiatrist at the Department of Health, and nearly killed his 2-year-old son, who had multiple injuries. Almost 41 years later, and almost 2,500 deaths later, we're not that far ahead of the game. And I encourage you to read the testimony of Melissa Lau, who is a recent victim. The highway carnage is not going to end unless something changes. We here in Hawaii, as well as most other states, have hit a plateau. Researchers tell us that the best thing we can do is reduce the blood alcohol to 0.05, a level where measurable impairment begins. Thank you for this opportunity to testify in support of the bill.
Okay, thank you. Next up, we have Hawaii Public Health Institute in support.
Yeah, good afternoon, Vice Chair Rick Collins of the Hawaii Public Health Institute. It's standing on our testimony of support, and just a couple of points we want to make is that this is about separating drinking and driving. This is not a hit on drinking, but separating the two. While this is not a normative law yet in place for our country, I do want to point out that 85% of the population in the world lives at a 0.05 or below BAC level in terms of their laws. And so, but unfortunately, only Utah in the United States has done that so far. And we just want to ask for your support to help us lead the way in reducing alcohol-related crashes in our communities and lead the way for the United States as well. Thank you for allowing me to provide testimony and support.
Good, thank you. Next up, we have Wine Institute in opposition.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair and Chair. Louis Salaveria on behalf of the Wine Institute. We will stand on our written testimony in opposition and be happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next up, we have Hawaii Alcohol Policy Alliance in support. Not present. All right, members, we have a number of individuals in support and in opposition. The only one here to testify is Cynthia Okazaki in support.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the House Committee on Judiciary. My name is Cynthia Okazaki. Thank you so much for the opportunity to testify in strong support of Senate Bill 754. I stand on my written testimony and would like to emphasize that the purpose of this bill is not to stop people from drinking, which some testimonies state. The purpose is to stop people from driving when they drink. This bill will save lives and injuries. I urge you to pass Senate Bill 754 on to the Consumer Protection Committee for their consideration. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That's all the testifiers. Members, any questions? Rep. Ward.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. McNamee. Carol, you were very modest in your testimony. If my colleagues will recall, it was a special session that you fought long and hard to get I forget how many years ago to get it to 0.08 where we are now. And now we're talking about 0.05. The question I have is, I think you have, and I wanted to get an update, you've diversified into the metrics for drugs also, as we've measured into 0.8 down to 0.5. Some of the police departments have said that, there's much drug driving out there as possible. So is MAD now also focusing on drug driving as well as the usual drunk driving?
Yeah, the answer is yes, Representative Ward. We are, our national office recently changed their stance and has put that as part of our mission to work against drug driving. And MAD here in Hawaii had a conference in October of 2018, I believe it was, on drugs and driving, especially as it pertained to the younger driver, anywhere from 17, 18 up to in their early 30s, because they are the most at risk. So we are very, very concerned about that, and we will be continuing to do what we can and educate more people about this problem.
And you have a test is easily usable by the police as the breathalyzer is for alcohol. There is one also for meth or weed or whatever.
There's no quick thing like the breathalyzer, but we have police officers who are very well trained, drug recognition experts who can be called in when drugs are suspected, and they do a fabulous job of identifying whether drugs are involved and what category, and often down to what exact drug a person may be on. We do have one problem, that we do not have a drug lab here, so blood samples have to be sent to the mainland. At this point, there is a bill pending in the legislature right now asking for the approval of a drug lab.
Thank you for your testimony. You lend a lot of credibility to this effort in this bill. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you. Rep. McKelvey.
I don't know who can answer this or not. Let's see. I'm curious, what in layman's terms would point the percentage proposed in this bill be? 2 beers in an hour, 1 glass of wine in an hour? What would get you, what would be, I guess, the drink equivalent of concede?
You gotta give them your weight.
All right, well, let's start with, all right, how about yours? Let's just say, theoretically, like average weight, what, 180? 200 pounds. Let's just say 200-pound person.
So, go ahead. I'm sorry, cut somebody off.
Oh, I was just going to answer. A 160-pound man could have 3 drinks. This is in the first hour, and before getting to a 0.05. And then you metabolize 1 drink per hour. So if you then in the next hour, you could have 1 drink to replace the one that was metabolized. And
if
so
you had
on.
if you had a
during the
glass of
evening.
water within those 3 drinks, like the TV commercial tells you to do, so you could have three drinks in a glass of water, you would be probably well below the 0.5 or below it, I should say.
I believe so. I don't think you metabolize alcohol faster or slower with water.
Okay. All right, thank you.
But I'm not a justifier.
I have a
Rep.
similar
Nakamura?
question for Carol. So Carol, for a female 125 pounder, what would you?
Very brave.
That would probably be something like maybe 1.5 drinks in the first hour, and then again you metabolize 1 drink per hour. But we also have to say these are standard drinks. These are not like Mai Tais or some of the other tropical drinks we have here, or certain beers that are high in alcohol content. So this is one standard glass of wine, which is 4 something ounces, one standard beer that's 12 ounces, and a mixed drink that only has, I'm forgetting now how many ounces of alcohol, but what is considered by the bar industry as a standard drink.
So I have a follow-up question, Carol. So we saw in the testimony from the restaurant folks about, most of the alcohol involved traffic fatalities in Hawaii are with those with 0.10 and above. 71% of fatalities are people with much higher, double the amount of blood alcohol content. Is that accurate?
I don't know that that particular percentage, but I do know that we have another bill that's pending to increase the penalties for those with a high BAC, which we consider to be 0.15 and above.
Right.
So we are trying to discourage that, but at the same time, having a lower blood alcohol of 0.05 will encourage all people to be more careful with what they are doing, whether it's exactly what they drink or making sure that they have transportation back home after they've been somewhere where there's alcohol being provided.
This chart
So it's really kind of two different things.
Carol, this chart that was included showed in 2019, alcohol involved traffic fatalities in Hawaii, 10% were caused by people with blood alcohol content between 0.05 and 0.08. So there was 10% that of fatalities caused by people within this category. I think we're now targeting.
Yes.
So
Yes.
This is.
But I think it's the whole idea of giving people more to think about and maybe more incentive, whoever they are and whatever their drinking habits or patterns are, to really think about getting an alternative way of getting home, getting there in the first place maybe, and then getting home, using a designated driver, Uber, Lyft, or the bus, or I mean, you name it. But really, everybody needs to start thinking that way. And by taking this step, I think that will happen.
Yeah, so it's really changing the mindset of people.
Yes, exactly.
One more?
One last one, yeah, real quick. Carol, if you follow the argument to, I guess, its logical extreme, I mean, I bet was here when we reduced it to 0.08, now it's 0.05. Why don't we just make it 0.00? No, I mean, wouldn't you theoretically, it would end all drunk driving accidents if it was just 0% or some minutia number even further below 0.5?
Well, first of all, there's a measurability factor. We can't really do a good job of measuring lower than a 0.02. And there are bills from victims in the legislature right now for zero tolerance. And they really feel very strongly about that because they've had loved ones killed. And as I said, I mean, the stories are heart-wrenching. So I understand. And sure, we wouldn't say no if you want to go to a zero tolerance, but generally we're seeing across the world, although there are some countries with a 0.02, most of the countries have 0.05, and I guess this is just what the trend is. But places like Sweden, Norway, maybe Japan, I can't remember what Japan has, but there are countries that have a 0.02, and yeah, we could go there, but at this point, we're just starting with, and I won't say we are going there, but at this point, we are saying 0.05, which we think is reasonable. It's when there's a measurable, you have a measurable impairment.
Okay, Rep. Ward, last question.
Last question. It follows up Representative McKelvey's practical information you can use. He asked how many drinks does this actually equal? And he asked then, does water dilute it? And my question, and this is as useful as any bartender would ever be able to find, what food should people eat to dilute it? Now, there's people who are going to find this very helpful. And it may not sound directly relevant to what we're doing legally, but is there something that people, when they do see this, they're going to have to adjust their lifestyles? Are there diminution of the alcohol blood content by eating? And if so, what kind of thing?
Representative Ward, the way I'll answer that is, I don't know about day-to-day eating, but what we say is for people who are hosting parties, try not to have too many things that are very salty, because of course the salt wants a person to have more fluid, right? And usually the fluid available is beer, wine, or some kind of alcoholic drink. So you don't encourage more drinking by having salty food. So that sort of thing is something to keep in mind, and to have food so that people have food in their stomachs. But other than the salt, I don't know of any other thing that would affect blood alcohol levels.
Thank you. That's been very useful. Thank you, Chair, for your indulgence.
Okay, thank you.
That's the salt.
Masterclass on drinking. Next up, SP 1121 ST2 relating to housing. First up, we have Department of Taxation with comments.
Thank you, Chair. I realize this is an administration measure, but this bill does run afoul of the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Next up, we have DHHL in support.
Aloha, Vice Chair Matayoshi, Chair Nakashima, and members of the committee. The department strongly supports this bill, and I would point out that absent of this bill, we would still be able to apply for these exemptions, but it would be through the HHFDC. So I'm not sure if that would run afoul of the American Recovery Act.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Tax Foundation of Hawaii with comments. Not here. Okay. Next, we have Catholic Charities of Hawaii in support.
Thank you. Thank you, Vice Chair Matayoshi. This is Betty Lou Larson with Catholic Charities Hawaii. We support this bill because we see such a huge backlog in the demand for housing from Native Hawaiian beneficiaries. We feel this is really critical. In earlier testimony, there's been comments about the number of homeless among the Native Hawaiians. So the housing need is very great. This would be one creative way to help DHHL save money and to be able to then use that money to create more housing specifically for Native Hawaiian people. So we support this bill and ask you to do so.
Okay, thank you. That's all the testifiers. Members, any questions? Rep. McKelvey.
Thank you. Real quick, Vice Chair. Let's see, William Isla, DHHL.
Yes, sir.
Yes, thank you. I know you suggested there was maybe changes that you could go down another path that wouldn't run afoul of the recent act, but as drafted, would you agree with the tax director that this measure runs afoul of that federal act we just received?
You know, I haven't had time to read that particular section of the American Recovery Act, so I'm not able to answer your question at that time. I do want to say that the current procedure, not that we would go down another way, but the current procedure in requesting an exemption from GE taxes for affordable housing already exists, and that's what I was referring to.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you, Vice Chair.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, Rep. Ward?
Mr. Choi, please. Mr. Choi, could you restate why you think this is going to run afoul of any of those previous acts of the Congress? And why should that, it being that we are a state jurisdiction, have to even bother? This is a fiscal matter, not anything with land ownership or other titles or things that really get sticky.
Well, the act specifically says anything directly or indirectly offset a reduction in net tax revenues will run afoul of the act. So
But that's tags, right? That's not, that's,
an exemption will definitely run afoul of the act.
so it'd be an AG to whether DAGS was on the money in that regard. By the way, when did DAGS say that? Was that recent?
This is not DAGS. This is the American Rescue Plan of 2021. It's part of the coronavirus.
Oh, I see. Oh, that makes it all the less credible. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, members. Any other questions? If not, we'll move on to SB 1220, SD1 relating to criminal history record checks. First up, the only person, University of Hawaii in support.
Hi, good afternoon, Chair Nakashima, Vice Chair Matayoshi, and members of the committee. Sarah Hirakami from the University of Hawaii Office of Human Resources. We want to thank you for this opportunity to offer our support of SB 1220, and we'll be standing our written submission today, but I'll be here to answer any questions that the committee may have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That's all the testifiers. Members, any questions? If not, Rep. Lopresti.
Hi, for UH, what kind of jobs are covered by this? Sorry, my mic.
Originally, it's going to cover our university security officers or USOs. These are civil service employees whose recruitment was previously done by DHERD, but this category of employee only exists at the university. So it made more sense to allow the university to do the full recruitment actions for USOs. We don't do it currently, but the bill could also cover other public safety employees, such as the people who supervise the USOs, or we also have student employees who work in public safety. And for example, if someone doesn't feel comfortable walking alone at night, they can call up the Manoa Public Safety and they will send a student escort to walk with them or drive next to them in a cart. So in theory, it could cover these other types of employees as well. But the initial plan is to start with just the USOs for now.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? If not, we'll move on to SB 678, SD1, HD1 relating to collective bargaining. First off, we have the Office of Collective Bargaining in opposition.
Oh, yes, thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Andrew Garrett, Deputy Director with DHERD, on behalf of the Chief Negotiator, Riker Wada. In the interest of time, we'll stand on our written testimony in opposition. You do recall about a month ago, you folks heard the companion bill, House Bill 465. As this particular bill made its way through the legislative process, we did receive a question in the Senate if there's any other board or commission under the governor's purview within the executive branch that has this kind of a mechanism where he has to basically appoint from a list of one. We did confer with the office, with the Boards and Commissions office, and as well as our Deputy AG. And to their knowledge, there is no such board that follows this kind of, again, mechanism. So with that, we'll be available for any questions. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Next up, we have HSTA in support.
Hello, aloha Chair and Vice Chair. Mitsuhiga speaking for Wilbert Hulk, Executive Director of the Hawaii State Teachers Association. We'll stand in our written testimony in support. We just want representation, and labor should be able to have a representative of labor. Thank you.
Yep, thank you. Next up, we have HGEA in support.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. Michelle Kurihara-Klein on behalf of our Executive Director, Randy Pereira, and the Hawaii Government Employees Association. We stand on our written testimony in strong support and be happy to answer any questions that any of the committee members may have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Members, any questions? Seeing none, we'll move on to SB 1107, SD2, HD1 relating to the Hawaii Emergency Management Agency. First up, we have Haima in support.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair. This is David Lopez, Executive Officer of HIEMA, speaking on behalf of the Administrator, Luke Myers. HIEMA stands on his testimony to support this bill, and we are, of course, available for any discussion. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. Next up, we have the oh gosh, I can't even pronounce his name. Adjunct General in support. Is this yeah, I think this is General Hara. I think they just misspelled their thing. General Hara, are you there? Okay, if not, the Hawaii State Energy Office in support. Nope, not here. All right, that's it. Members, any questions? Rep. Nakamura.
I have a question for David from Haima. David, this section talks about very specific actions, cutting and trimming dangerous trees, stabilizing unstable rock and soil, cleaning streets and waterways. Would the language that you want to add is not an action. So can you describe what it is that it sounded like you want like a catch-all or a general powers?
As for other natural disasters that that may need mitigation measures.
Are there examples of the kinds of experience in the past flooding that you need these powers for?
I'm sorry, ma'am, I couldn't hear you.
Can you give any examples from the past flood where you would want to have broadened powers?
Yes, there are. For instance, in floods, there may be streams that need to be cleared, or debris or other things that come in from flooding, or like, for instance, in this past severe weather that we've had, we might have to go out and make emergency clearance for mitigation purposes because of, again, oncoming weather or something of that nature.
It seems like stream cleaning is already in here. So is there something beyond the rock and stream cleaning that you want this to cover?
I'm sorry, ma'am, I can't hear you. You're very low.
Seems like the example that you gave is covered under the existing law, stream cleaning. So debris removal, all of that is under the existing law on page 2. So I was just wondering, what are the actions that you're asking for under this general heading of additional natural hazards? I think it's important to turn this into an action in this bill to be consistent with the language of this bill, but I'm not clear what, is it just responding to? Sort of
Yes, ma'am. Any other mitigation measures that would come up that would be brought to our attention to be able to act on?
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? If not, we'll move on to SB 134, ST1, HT1 relating to emergency powers. First, we have Civil Beat Law Center for the Public Interest in support.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair Mariyoshi, Chair Nakashima, and members of the committee. Brian Black, Executive Director for the Civil Beat Law Center for the Public Interest, stand on comments in support. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Common Cause Hawaii with comments.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. We stand in our written comments and support. We need transparency, especially during these times of a pandemic, for people to understand and know what our government is doing. I'm available to answer any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Members, any questions? Seeing none, we'll move on to SB 192, ST1, HT1 relating to public assistance. We have one testifier today, DHS, with comments.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair Scott Nakasone with the Department of Human Services. Department stands on its written testimony offering comments, and I'm here for help answer any questions. Thank you.
Okay, members, any questions? Okay, I have one question for DHS. On this bill, I just need some clarification. On page 2, lines 16 and 17, it says it defines a qualified individual as someone unable to engage in any, I'm sorry, this is line 12 to 15, unable to meet the income and financial resource eligibility criteria for the Federal Supplemental Security Income Program or the program's successor. Does this mean that people who qualify for this additional relief are those that make too much to qualify for this federal program?
I believe what it's saying is it's for the people who do not qualify for SSI, I believe is what it's making reference to.
Okay, I see what you're saying. So they're making too much income, or they have too many financial resources to meet to qualify for that program.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Any other questions? If not, we'll move on to SB 1401, SD2 HD1 relating to transportation. First up, we have Department of Transportation in support.
Thank you, Chair. David Rodriguez with the Department of Transportation, and we stand our written testimony in support. Available to answer any questions.
Next up, Department of Health in support.
Good afternoon, Chair Nakashima, Vice Chair Matayoshi, and members of the committee. Heidi Hansen-Smith with the Department of Health representing Director Char, and we'd like to stand on our testimony in support. Thanks for the opportunity.
Okay, thank you. Next up, we have Aloha Care in support. Peggy, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yep,
Aloha, thanks. It's Peggy with Aloha Care. We stand in support of this measure. Thank you so much for hearing it. Hopefully moving it forward. Aloha.
Okay, thank you. Next up, we have Ulupono Initiative in support.
Aloha, Vice Chair Matayoshi, Chair Nakashima, members of the committee. Ulupono will stand on its testimony in strong support of this measure. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That's all the testifiers we have on this measure. Members, any questions? Okay, if not, I have one for Department of Transportation. I am honestly just curious why this bill is needed. Do you not have the power or authority to do exactly what's in this bill?
I believe in our testimony, we are practicing complete streets, taking into account all users of the roadways. But
Right.
This is not our bill's, Chair.
Okay, so considering, and we did read your testimony, I didn't see anything in there, though, that indicated that you need this bill. Is that fair? Is there
I
any
believe
power
so,
here
Chair.
that you don't already have or cannot already accomplish without it?
Yes, in our testimony, we also say that we increase transparency. And so a lot of this project information on complete streets is available on our website, Chair.
Yes. Okay. I think you're not answering the question. Is there anything in this bill that you cannot do without the bill?
If I can, I believe Kent Tatsuguchi or Rachel Roper is on the line. They could probably speak more to that.
Okay.
Hi, thank you for hearing our testimony. So we are pretty much doing everything, in this bill. We are increasing the transparency. So the things that the bill is asking for us to report on are now available on our website, and we'll be doing more, over the next few years. So I believe, we can do everything in the bill.
Okay, thank you. Members, any other questions? Report.
Following up with DOT, doesn't the bill specify that 5% of the eligible federal funds have to be set aside for the bikeways? Isn't that one of the things that it does? That maybe now you don't have the specific 5% requirement? And if so, how much is 5% of all your federal funds or eligible federal funds under the bill? Question mark?
So yes, that would increase. So yes, I misspoke. That would increase our requirement from 2 to 5%. So that is the difference. But the other parts of the bill were what I was speaking to.
Exactly. But what is 5%? In other words, how much money would be going to the bikeways if we took 5% times whatever this amount of federal funds is, which are considerable, right? You're 80% federally funded, as I recall. So how big of a chunk of change would you get for bikeways if you took 5% of your eligible federal funds and put it into bike?
I'm sorry, I'm looking that number up right now. So it varies slightly year to year. But last year, 2.4% of our budget was, of the eligible funds was $4.6 million dollars total, which the federal share was $3.68 million.
So 5% could be 8 to 10 million, roughly, if we ballpark it.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you. Any other questions? If not, we'll move on to SB 1166, SC2, HD1, relating to rentals for public land leases. We have one testifier, DLNR, in support.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Russell Tsuji for DLNR. We stand in strong support of this admin proposal. Currently, our law only allows the board to grant up to 1 year of fair market rent as a credit for improvements made to the property at the inception of a lease. We're asking, because we have now we inherited some properties where there are structures that need to be demolished and in some instances, vacant parcels that need infrastructure work. We're asking that this section be amended to allow the board to allow rent credits of up to 20 years of fair market rent or the cost of actual improvements which relate to demolition or infrastructure costs. I stand ready for any questions you may have of this. Thank you.
Members, any questions? If not, we'll move on to the last bill of the day. SB 791, SD2, HD1, relating to vessels. We have one testifier, DLNR, in support.
Aloha, Vice Chair Mataoshi, committee members, Ed Underwood, Administrator with the Division of Boating and Ocean Recreation. The department stands in strong support of this measure, and we ask that the date be amended to be effected upon approval. And I'm here to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you. Members, any questions? Report.
Mr. Underwood, thank you for all you do. And regarding this bill on abandoned vessels, does that include an abandoned vessel on the side of a street, rather than in the ocean or thereabouts?
Representative Ward, no, it would not. That still would remain with the agency that has jurisdiction over that area.
So I have to call the Coloma Valley Police Department to get that vessel that has been abandoned at the parking lot. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Members, any other questions? If not, we'll recess for decision making. Recess.
Okay, thank you very much, members. It was a long agenda, but we made it through. Committee on Judiciary and Hawaiian Affairs reconvening for decision-making Tuesday, March 23rd, 2021. Our 2 o'clock agenda in room 325. First up today, Senate Bill 219, Senate Draft 2, relate to crimes on agricultural lands. Members, Chair's recommendation is that we create a new Part 2 to the bill with a appropriation language to the Department of Attorney General to establish a statewide agricultural theft task force to provide law enforcement with tools necessary to identify ag theft perpetrators. And the chair will suggest in the committee report the initial funding of $250,000. And also, I think in the body of the bill, we removed the rebuttable presumption. Members, any questions or comments? Seeing none, Vice Chair, as amended.
Chair's recommendation is to pass SB 219, ST2, HD1 with amendments. Chair and Vice Chair both vote aye. Representative Ichiyama? Aye. Rep. Kobayashi?
No.
Rep. Lopresti?
Aye.
Rep. Lowen?
Aye.
Rep. McKelvey?
Aye.
Rep. Nakamura?
Aye.
Rep. Takumi is excused. Rep. Todd?
Aye.
Rep. Tokioka?
Aye.
Rep. Ward?
Aye.
Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you very much, members. SB 697, Senate Draft 1, House Draft 1, related to Kalaupapa Month. Chair's recommendations, we pass this forward as is. Members, any questions or comments? Seeing none, Vice Chair, as is.
Chair's recommendation is to pass SB 697, ST1, HD1 as is, noting the previously excused members. Any members voting with reservation? Any members voting no? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you very much. SB 939 related to Juneteenth Day. Chair's recommendation is that we cannot change the title of the bill, but in the body of the bill, from Juneteenth, delete the day, so it's just Juneteenth. Members, any questions or comments? Seeing none, Vice Chair, as amended.
Chair's recommendation is to pass SB 939 with amendments noting the previously excused members. Any members voting with reservations? Any members voting no? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you very much. SB 1243, Senate Draft 2, House Draft 1, related to the phase out of private correctional facilities. Members, Chair recommends that we defer this measure. SB 664, Senate Draft 1, House Draft 1, related to public safety. Chair will note that bill already has a defective date, and I propose we move it forward as is. Members, any questions or comments? Seeing none, Vice Chair, as is.
Chair's recommendation is to pass SB 664, ST1, HD1 as is, noting the previously excused members. Any members with reservations? Any members voting no?
No.
No with Representative Kobayashi. Any other members voting no? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you very much. SB 11, Senate Draft 1, House Draft 1, related to insurance security data. Insurance Commissioner has asked us to give him some time to review the drafts. And so I am deferring decision-making on this to tomorrow, March 24th. 2021, 2:30 p.m. in this room. Okay, members, next, Senate Bill 513, Senate Draft 1, House Draft 1, relate to the enforcement of laws. Okay, this is our fireworks bill. Members, Chair recommends working with the judiciary's amendments, proposals. And on page 39, lines 12 to 13, state there shall be a fine of $500 or $2,000 for multiple offenses. Other technical amendments for clarity, consistency, and style. And the bill is already defect dated. Members, any questions or comments? Seeing none, Vice Chair, as amended.
Chair's recommendation is to pass SB 513 SD1 HD1 with amendments noting the previously excused members. Any members voting with reservations? Any members voting no?
No.
No from Representative Kobayashi. Any other members voting no? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you. SB 1204, draft 2, House draft 1, related to tax appeals. On page 3, line 4, disqualifications. Let's see. The disqualifications should also be included. Technical amendments needed for clarity, consistency, and style. And defect date, bill July 1st, 2021. Members, any questions or comments? Seeing none, Vice Chair, as amended.
The Chair's recommendation is to pass SB 1204 SD2 HD1 with amendments noting the previously excused members. Any members voting with reservations? Any members voting no? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
SB 516, Senate Draft 1, House Draft 1, related to education. Chair's recommendation is that we include all House amendments for calling out the Native Hawaiians and Pacific Islanders, other technical amendments for clarity, consistency, and style. And the bill is already defect dated. And members, any questions or comments?
Good bill.
Seeing none, Vice Chair, as amended.
Chair's recommendation is to pass SB 516 SD1 HD1 with amendments noting the previously excused members. Any members voting with reservations? Any members voting no? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you very much. Senate Bill 1311, Senate Draft 2, House Draft 1, related to sustainable schools. On a clerical note on page 5, line 2, the subsection should be changed to paren A, paren 3. Technical amendments needed for clarity, consistency, and style. And the bill already contains a defective date. Members, any questions or comments? Seeing none, Vice Chair, with amendments.
Chair's recommendation is to pass SB 1311 SD2 HD1 with amendments noting the previously excused members. Any members voting with reservations? Any members voting no? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you very much. SB 806, House Draft 1, related to public school lands. Chair's recommendation is that we pass this out as is. Members, any questions or comments? Okay. Vice Chair, as is.
Chair's recommendation is to pass SB 806 HD1 as is. Any noting the previously excused members. Any members voting with reservations? Any members voting no? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, SB 1395, Senate Draft 1, Senate Draft 2, House Draft 1, relating to boards and commissions. Chair's recommendation, we defer this. SB 400 SD1 HD1 related to campaign finance reports. Chair's recommendations to pass this out as is. Members, any questions or comments? Okay. Vice Chair, as is.
Chair's recommendation is to pass SB 400 SD1 HD1 as is, noting the previously excused members. Any members voting with reservations? Any members voting no? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, SB 401, House Draft 1, related to violations of campaign finance law. Chair's recommendation is to pass this out as is. Members, any questions or comments? Seeing none, Vice Chair, as is.
Chair's recommendation is to pass SB 401 HD1 as is, noting the previously excused members. Any members voting with reservations? Any members voting no? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you very much. SB 402, House Draft 1, related to reimbursements for expenditures by committees. Chair's recommendations pass this out as is. Members, any questions or comments? Seeing none, Vice Chair, as is.
Chair's recommendation is to pass SB 402 HD1 as is, noting the previously excused members. Any members voting with reservations? Any members voting no? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, SB 405, Senate Draft 1, House Draft 1. No, yeah, I don't need to. Yeah, okay. Related to campaign contributions, Chair's recommendation passes out as is. Members, any questions or comments? Seeing none, Vice Chair, as is.
Chair's recommendation is to pass SB 405 SD1 HD1 as is, noting the previously excused members. Any members voting with reservations? Any members voting no? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you very much. SB 406, Senate Draft 1, House Draft 1, related to Campaign Spending Commission staff. Chair's recommendations pass this out as is. Members, any questions or comments? Seeing none, Vice Chair, as is.
Chair's recommendation is to pass SB 406 SD1 HD1 as is, noting the previously excused members. Any members voting with reservations? Any members voting no? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you very much. SB 560, House Draft 1, related to ranked choice voting. Chair notes that the tie in the case seems to be undefined. So under this section, a tie under the section between candidates for the most votes in the final round, or a tie between the last candidate in any round, shall be decided by lot, and the candidate chosen by lot shall be, in the first case, the winner, and in the second case, the loser.
Translated means what?
So if you're tied for first and you draw the lot, then you're the winner. And if you're tied for last and you draw the lot, you're the loser. Okay, members, any questions or comments?
You're gonna pass it or comment?
Pass as amended.
Drunken co-amendment.
Okay, Vice Chair.
Okay, Chair's recommendation is to pass SB 560 HD1 with amendments noted the previously excused members. Any members voting with reservations? Reservations. Rep. Tokioka. Any other members voting with reservations? Any members voting no?
No.
No from Rep. Ward. Any other members voting no? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you very much. SB 135, Senate Draft 1, Senate Draft 2, House Draft 1. Chair's recommendations pass this out as is. Members, any questions or comments? Seeing none, Vice Chair.
Chair's recommendation is to pass SB 135 SD2 HD1 as is, noting the previously excused members. Any members voting with reservations? Any members voting no? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, SB 717, Senate Draft 1, House Draft 1. Chair is concerned about the concerns brought up. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Oh, no. Yeah, the department indicates that they're already doing this, so we will defer the matter. SB 1021, Senate Draft 2, House Draft 1, related to burials. There's been quite a bit of concern about the DOH's silence on this matter, and so I do want to ensure that DOH propagates rules to implement this bill, and so add language into the bill to affirm that. I'd like to delete part 4 from the bill for the time being. That the term alkaline hydrolysis be used consistently throughout the bill instead of going between that and water cremation. Under section 2, delete the term water cremation, cremants, and ashes, and the definition of cremation equipment and traditional Hawaiian burial, since these words are not used in chapter 531B. And on page 18, line 18, insert the definition of traditional Hawaiian burial from page 5, line 6, technical amendments needed for, and other technical amendments needed for clarity, consistency, and style. Members, any questions or comments? Seeing none, Vice Chair.
Chair's recommendation is to pass SB 1021 ST1, ST2, HD1 with amendments noted the previously excused members. Any members voting with reservations? Any members voting no? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you very much. Senate Bill 221, Senate Draft 1, House Draft 1, related to homelessness. Chair's recommendation is that we defer this matter. House Bill 387, Senate Draft 1, House Draft 1, related to the room confinement of children at detention and shelter facilities. Members, on page 5, lines 4 to 6, subsection D4 requires notification of child's placement in room confinement to the social services manager of the juvenile client services branch for the First Circuit Court instead of the circuit court where the child is located, because all of the detention is here on Oahu. And then on page 5, lines 5 to 12, indicate that they can be detained no more than 3 hours unless they are a danger to selves or others. Okay, members, any questions or comments? Vice Chair, as amended.
Chair's recommendation is to pass SB 387 SD1 HD1 with amendments noted the previously excused members. Any members voting with reservations? Any members voting no? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, SB 821, Senate Draft 2, House Draft 1. In checking with the maker, there was no compelling need for this bill, so we will defer this. SB 607, Senate Draft 3, House Draft 1, relate to affordable housing. Bill already contains a defective date. Chair recommendation is pass it out as is. Members, any questions or comments? Seeing none, Vice Chair, as is.
Chair's recommendation is to pass SB 607 SD3 HD1 as is, noting the previously excused members. Any members voting with reservations? Any members voting no? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you very much. SB 866, Senate Draft 2, House Draft 1, relating to affordable housing. Chair's recommendation is that we incorporate the NAIOP amendments, other technical amendments needed for clarity, consistency, and style. And I will note that the bill already contains a defective date. Members, any questions or comments? Seeing none, Vice Chair, as amended.
Chair's recommendation is to pass SB 866 SD2 HD1 with amendments noting the previously excused members. Any members voting with reservations? Any members voting no?
No.
No by Representative Kobayashi. Any other members voting no? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you very much. Senate Bill 2, Senate Draft 2, House Draft 1, relate to public lands. Chair's recommendation is that we pass this out as is. Members, any questions or comments?
Chair.
Representative McKelvey.
No, thank you. However, I'm going to be going no on this measure for now for various reasons, but thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions or comments?
Same request.
Okay, Representative Ward voting no. Any other questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, Vice Chair, as is.
Chair's recommendation is to pass SB2, SD2, HD1 as is, noting the previously excused members and the no votes from Representatives McKelvey and Ward. Any other members voting with reservations? Rep. Lopresti with reservations. Any other members voting with reservations? Any other members voting no?
No.
No from Representative Kobayashi. Any other members voting no?
No.
No from Representative Tokioka. Oops. Wrong box. Okay, any other members voting no? Okay, Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you very much. Senate Bill 754 relating to operating a vehicle while intoxicated. Chair's recommendation is that we defer this matter. SB 1121, SD2 related to housing. Chair is concerned on this one regarding the tax director's comments that the general excise tax may run us afoul of the federal legislation. But I will pass this on to finance, and they will. I'll let them make the decision. Members, any questions or comments?
Chair, I'll be going with reservations just because of the tax director's comments, but.
Okay, thank you very much. Members, any other questions or comments? Representative Lopresti.
I'll be reservations as well for that reason and the same reason I've been reservation on other bills. That I don't think the housing is not being built because of these small savings that they'll get. There's other systemic problems. So.
Okay, thank you very much. Members, any other questions or comments? Seeing none.
Chair of a comment.
Representative
I mean, there's
Ward.
savings would be $9.5 million if we project out what this would be for DHHL. You could build a lot of houses for $9 million. Just a comment. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, Vice Chair, as is.
Okay. Chair's recommendation is to pass SB 1121, SD2 as is, noting the previously excused members and the reservations of Representative McKelvey and Lopresti. Any other members voting with reservations?
Reservation.
Representative Tokioka, reservations. Any other members voting with reservations? Any members voting no? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you very much. SB 1220, Senate Draft 1, related to criminal history record checks. Chair's recommendation is that we pass this out as is. Members, any questions or comments? Seeing none, Vice Chair, as is.
Chair's recommendation is to pass SB 1220, SD1 as is, noting the previously excused members. Any members voting with reservations? Any members voting no? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, SB 678, Senate Draft 1, House Draft 1, related to collective bargaining. Chair's recommendation is that we pass this out as is. Members, any questions or comments? Seeing none, Vice Chair.
Chair's recommendation is to pass SB 678, SD1, HD1 as is, noting the previously excused members. Any members voting with reservations? Any members voting no? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Okay. Senate Bill 1107, Senate Draft 2, House Draft 1, related to the Hawaii Emergency Management Agency. Chair's recommendation is that we pass this out as is. Members, any questions or comments? Seeing none, Vice Chair, as is.
Chair's recommendation is to pass SB 1107, SD1, HD1, SD2, HD1 as is, noting the previously excused members. Any members voting with reservations? Any members voting no? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you very much. SB 134, Senate Draft 1, House Draft 1, related to emergency powers. Chair's recommendation is that we pass this out as is. Members, any questions or comments? If not, Vice Chair.
Chair's recommendation is to pass SB 134, SD1, HD1 as is, noting the previously excused members. Any members voting with reservations? Any members voting no? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you very much. SB 192, Senate Draft 1, House Draft 1, related to public assistance. Chair's recommendations, we pass this out as is. Members, any questions or comments? Seeing none, Vice Chair as is.
Chair's recommendation is to pass SB 192, ST1, HD1 as is, noting the previously excused members. Any members voting with reservations? Any members voting no? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
SB 1401, Senate Draft 2, House Draft 1, related to transportation. Chair will note that on page 3, line 18 to page 4, line 2, inclusion of the report on progress toward compliance with the Complete Streets Policy and Principle seems duplicative, since a report is also provided under the more appropriate section 264-25D. So we can delete lines 3, line 18 to page 4, line 2. Other technical amendments needed for clarity, consistency, and style. And I will note that bill already has a defective effective date. Members, any questions or comments?
Chair,
Representative Ward.
I'm going to vote with reservations, given the vice chair's question about what do you need to do if you didn't, what can't you do without this bill? And there was really never an answer that I could ascertain. So I'm just wondering why and what and wherefore. Thank you.
Representative.
I'm going to vote in support because I think that even if DOT is currently doing stuff this way, it's still good to put something in statute so we can ensure that it's done by any administration. And I strongly support this.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions? Okay, Vice Chair, as amended.
Chair's recommendation is to pass SB 1401, ST2, HD1 with amendments known to the previously excused members. Any members voting with reservations? Any members voting no? Oh, I'm sorry, besides where forward. Any members voting no? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you very much. Senate Bill 1166, Senate Draft 2, House Draft 1, related to rentals for public land leases. Our attorney recommends language to be included on page 4, line 17. When the release for result, commercial, industrial, or other business residential purposes requires a lease to demolish, the leasee to demolish existing improvements or provide basic infrastructure, including drainage, sewage, water, electricity, and other utilities before the leasee can make productive use of the land. The board may approve a reduction of waiver of lease rental for a period of up to 20 years, provided that the aggregate amount of the reduction or waive lease rental shall not exceed the amount of the leasee's total expenditure for demolition or provisions of the infrastructure. Okay. Members, any questions or comments? Representative Lopez.
Thank you, Chair. Appreciate the changes. I'm going to be a no vote on this one, though.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Members, any other questions or comments? Seeing none, Vice Chair as amended.
The Chair's recommendation is to pass SB 1166, ST2, HD1 with amendments known to the previously excused members. Any members voting with reservations? Any members voting no aside from Representative?
No.
Oops, wait a minute. Representative Lopresti, no. Representative Kobayashi, no. Any other members voting no? Representative Todd. Any other members voting no? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you very much. Senate Bill 791, Senate Draft 2, House Draft 1 relating to vessels. Chair's recommendations that may be passed this out as is. Members, any questions or comments? Vice Chair, as is.
Chair's recommendation is to pass SB 791, ST2, HD1 as is, known to the previously excused members. Any members voting with reservations? Any members voting no? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, members. Short agenda tomorrow, just 4 bills. See you then.